get into the advisory now. And as more young Australians enter the workforce and start building their super, how much do they really understand about the choices they're making? Dawn Thomas from the Wealth Designers joining me now to take a closer look. Dawn, I love this topic because I'm one of the fortunate people who was told by my financial advisor father very early on how important it is to really focus on your super as a young person. So what are we seeing now? Are people becoming savvy? Are they really thinking about their super, because it does set you up for greater retirement longer term?
Unfortunately, not for young people, Juliet. In fact, some parents don't even know that their children actually have a superannuation fund. I am also doing research into superannuation and the journey of young people. And what's coming up is that when I'm asking the question, does your child actually have superannuation? It's coming back as, actually, we're not sure, we don't know. So even starting with that, that's not a good indication on what those early pathways are for young people.
So what should they be doing in your view, and how do we increase literacy apart from watching shows like AusBiz?
Well, I think this is a conversation for parents as for young people, is that firstly, if your young person is working currently with the rules, if they're under 18, they need to meet a number of hours work, and that's about 30 hours for them to be able to pay a super guarantee. If they're above 18, they're going to get their super guarantee, meaning that's the mandatory contribution that your employer has to pay into super. So if they're above 18 and they're working, there's a good chance they already have a super fund. Actually, more than a good chance, they definitely should be having a super fund. If they're under 18, what you would want to do is go into myGov, their myGov account, and check whether a superannuation fund has already been opened for them. Even though you did not fill in any paperwork, the employer can set up the first super fund for that young person if they don't have one already.
So when we talk about getting super as well for under 18 workers, is this, in your view, a very important reform, or is it maybe overcomplicating the system?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, if they're working, if it's already part of a normal pay package, if you think about the confusion that parents have right now, do they have super, do they not have super? If we know that you work, you get your super payment, it's more straightforward. But I think the other issue to this is that the reform really looks at powerful outcomes of young people. However, we're putting them in a position to have to make investment decisions before they actually know how to make them.
So if we're celebrating getting more super into young people's accounts, are we doing, sort of to that earlier point, enough to make sure that they really know what it's about, how important it is to keep monitoring their accounts and making sure that it's actually growing at a good rate?
Yeah, currently the data says that we are not doing enough. So the important decisions around that parents can take to their young people, people watching AusBiz, is that they can go back today and ask, let's look at myGov. Do you have a super fund? Let's see how you're invested. Have a discussion about the investment option, because if they don't pick an investment option, one is picked for you. And that may not be the best option for a young person who has a really long investment time frame. Juliet, you are a fan of superannuation and investing early, and you know the importance of picking the right investment option, because that's going to be a lifetime decision and benefit if you get it right.
Yeah, and as I mentioned at the start, I was very lucky because, I had a parent who actively, spoke to me about this. Not everybody has that. Talking about that parent angle, in your view, should a carer or somebody in a young person's life be taking more time to explain how important it is to get really actively involved? And what are some of the things you think people should say to young people to make sure that their super is going to be in the best position when they retire in, say, 50 years' time?
Okay, so firstly, it's about choice. I'm a real firm believer in choice. If this is going to be your biggest financial asset when you're young, because that's what it will be, and then one of the biggest financial assets as you grow through life, you need to know what decisions you're making around that. Currently, there's super stapling, meaning that the first super fund that may be open for a young person is not a momentary decision. It actually could be a lifelong decision, because the employer has set up a fund, and that fund will follow you through your different workplaces. Most funds are competitive because the government has done a lot of work around that. However, you've not made that choice. And that's also not a good indication that you haven't made a choice, because it probably means you haven't made a choice with your investment option. And that's really powerful in terms of a decision and a conversation parents need to have, is that look at that investment option and look at the choice of the investment option. most funds default to a balanced type fund, and other funds might default to what they call a life stage fund, which invests you based on your date of birth or your year of birth. So it's important to take into account that young person's investment time frame and really have a discussion about, is that the right investment decision? Can you take on more growth assets? Because they've got the ability to ride out short-term and medium-term volatility.
And how important is it as well if people are switching jobs, which we all do when we're young? You go from maybe, a quick service restaurant to your first job to your second job, to make sure that those super accounts follow you, the consolidation piece?
Well, the government's done it already. Super stapling is what actually removing that issue of multiple super funds, because even if you don't supply your superannuation details to your new employer, it's on them to check with the ATO where your superannuation is. So as long as you've got a super fund already established, it's linked to your tax fund number, that fund will follow you from one job to the next. So that's why it's important to know what that fund actually is that you have. And if you're happy with that fund should follow you through, but maybe make it easier for your workplace by giving them the details so they don't have to contact the ATO to get all of that.